You know, right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, entertainment, and pop culture. Nick Durst here, along with Joe Calabrese. Joe, great guest for our audience today. And you, of course, will give the usual introduction that we do. But I figured first, if I find an introduction on our guest that was written by themselves, I might as well read it because nobody's going to do better than themselves. So our guest here today, and here is a quote from her. I'm a farmer. I have mini goats and two ducks, a hockey mom, sports analyst, model, social media influencer, and OnlyFans top creator. I have the best SEC sports picks in the entire sports industry. Add it up. I don't like Kentucky. They can't pull off checkers like a Vol does. Can't disagree there. But Joe, let everybody know some more background information on our guests and who we have with us.
It's not every day that we have a Playboy model with us. That's a first. We've done this now over 200 episodes. And like you said, sports, media, entertainment, pop culture, some comedians, some musicians, some reality stars, right? Never a Playboy model. That's a first. And she is a social media influencer. And if you weren't paying attention, she is a huge Tennessee Volunteers fan, still riding that high from a huge win against Alabama a couple of weeks ago. So we gave her a really incredibly long introduction. It's probably the longest introduction we've ever done, to be honest, but finally we get to introduce her. Sara, with no H, Blake Cheek. Sara, thank you for putting up with us, dealing with that long introduction. I know you're certainly probably flattered and pleased with that. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hey, thank you guys for having me on. That was a beautiful introduction.
Absolutely. So Joe mentioned it. Big win a few weeks ago for the Volunteers against Alabama, which was awesome. What did you think about the fans storming the field and how that all played out?
Okay, so that was absolutely epic. It was incredible. And I think that Tennessee has shown now after that win, after beating Bama, that we're back. And then we can storm the field better than anybody else.
There you go. And hopefully, Tennessee had to get a new goalpost. So luckily they were able to do that.
So actually, those goalposts have been goalposts in waiting. There's an interesting story behind that all. Like the last time we took the goalpost down was when we beat Bama long time ago. But I mean, who cares about that, right? So anyways, they were actually in waiting. So, and then we did do the GoFundMe, which I think started out as a joke, but then it just happened, which being a Vol, I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm going to say it. I'm kind of embarrassed that we had the GoFundMe, but I hope that all of that, I don't know where it all went, but I hope it went to something good.
How much do you think a goalpost actually cost? It can't be like that.
Right. I don't know. Was it only, it could have like 15 grand maybe? I don't know.
I was going to say at least a couple thousand, right?
Yeah. I just don't think it was, how much did we end up raising? It was like 155,000.
Yeah, it's probably enough to cover a couple of more goalposts.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe somebody's tuition too.
All right,
a couple of tuitions. Keep taking them down, taking them down, taking through the streets of Knoxville.
Oh my God, I hope that we never do that again, though. I mean, like, let's just keep winning and not ever take the goalpost down. Like we've already done it; it's been done. Like no more.
All right. Well, let's hope this is Tennessee's year. It'd be great to see them rise and be the cream of the crop. So far, they're looking pretty good, and time will tell. And we're going to get into some origin stories here with you. We're going to find out how you became a Volunteers fan, but it all started in Kansas. You were growing up in Kansas. Ultimately, you moved to Chicago. You did some moving around. So tell us what it was like living in those two locations, because they're very different.
Very different. So I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and we moved around a lot. So I've lived in Arizona, Chicago, back to Kansas City, and then Tennessee. But I never really had like a home, like a home base. to be this like incredible home based fan. I wish I did like grow up with just the Kansas City Chiefs and just the Jayhawks.
Right.
And I think like I would have had that different traditional take on things. But being from Kansas, we didn't have really a football team. I mean, you have K-State, but I was raised a Jayhawk. My dad played college ball. So I did cheer for the Jayhawks, but when it came to football, that was always empty for me. And I was never going to ever support K-State. I know a lot of people do in Kansas, which is crazy. They're like, oh yeah, we root for the Jayhawks during basketball season, and then we root for K-State during football season. I'm like, what? Wow, this is asinine. This is crazy. Your logic does not work with this one. So growing up in Chicago, you have the Chicago Bears, and I've always kind of been like, I always pull for the Chicago Bears, and they're kind of like my side piece team. So Titans, of course, I pull for the Titans, but I moved to Tennessee, and that has just always been home for me. And when I got married, that was actually how I became a Vol fan. I married into the fan base, and the tradition, everything matched so perfectly with like how I felt about the Jayhawks and the basketball program, and it filled that void. And then that became a passion. So I married into the Vol legacy when Derek Dooley was coach. And at that point, if you don't love them at their worst, you can't love them at their best. So I went through a lot with the Vols starting out. I mean, they put me through stress, anxiety. I mean, I probably gained more weight being a Vols fan, stress eating during the games, drinking more beer. So yeah, that's a little bit of that. Kansas, Chicago, Tennessee, but Chicago's very cold.
Oh, absolutely. So for Chicago, what's your go-to pizza place?
Oh, okay. I really like Rosati's, and we have one here in Florida. So I
Oh,
frequent that all the time. Lou Malnati's is, of course, just traditional. And I didn't know this until a couple years ago that you can actually order their pizza to have it shipped to your house. Right. So I
so
do like them too.
Joe and I recently we were on a trip for our podcast to Las Vegas, and Joe got to have his first taste of Chicago deep dish. We went to Giordano's. They had a location in Las
Yes.
Vegas. So Joe enjoyed the experience.
Oh, it's so good.
Never
Good.
been to Chicago though. I definitely want to go to Chicago soon and actually have
Go in the
the
summer.
real places. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
definitely. That's what I've heard. Friends going on for a bachelor party weekend a couple of
Oh, that
years
would be
ago.
fun, though.
But I have been to Michigan, so I have been on and around Lake Michigan. But I hear that that area surrounding there is really nice. So that's on the bucket list. Hopefully we'll
Definitely.
get to hopefully Nick and I will get out to see like a New York kind of game there and spend a weekend in Chicago. That's something to look forward to.
Definitely go to Wrigleyville.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. I hear some amazing things about that place.
It's fun.
I'll have to check it out. So Sarah, you of course, a big sports fan, but you also have a bit of an athletic background yourself. Back in high school, you were a guest mascot for some football games. You were in the dance team, and also showing off your smarts. You were on the student council, president of the Spanish club. So tell us about your interests growing up and how you were pretty much very well rounded.
So I always kind of did student council. Like that was just my way to, I loved the whole aspect of being able to plan things. And I think I always had this like business oriented mind where it was like, all right, the way I campaigned for student council was pitching business ideas. I'm like, hey, we could have BYOB, bring your own banana, and we could have, Sundays and all of these things. And these are great, wonderful things, but we have to fundraise. But I loved that. It was something that I thrived on. I love just helping the community, things of that nature. I think it comes natural to me as far as like being generous and always giving back. I feel like if you give back, good things come to you, but that's not why you should do them. It's just, it helps the world go round. Kindness, always be kind to somebody else because it spreads. You can change somebody's day. So I think that I thrived off of that aspect of things too. But yes, I was president of the Spanish club. I I went to a smaller high school in Baser, Kansas. So there weren't very many, you know, ethnic people in that area. So my dad is Hispanic and my mom's Filipino, and it just kind of worked out because I was very prideful in both heritage. So I did that, and I was on the dance team. I also did competitive dance, and I love dance. I danced for the Chicago Lovables for a little bit as well. That was fun. It's being competitive, it's performing. I love smiling. I found it natural to be always entertaining. It's just, I think that's just part of what makes me is I love to make people laugh. I love to make them smile, and anything that I can do to make somebody else feel better about themselves is something that I enjoy doing. But yeah, so I did dance team, and then I got suspended for drinking a Smirnoff bottle in high school because I liked to party also. I couldn't prioritize in high school very well. And I somehow managed to become the mascot in that 4 weeks that I was suspended from dance. Like, I couldn't help myself not be involved. So I was like, well, we don't have a regular mascot. Can I just be Bobby the Bobcat? And they're like, sure. I don't see why that could be bad. And I mean, of course, then it was game on. I was like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. If you're not smiling and looking to help people, I think there's something wrong with you, right?
Right.
And believe it or not, a lot of people are not like that, So, it's good. We enjoy that. Got a good question for you.
Okay.
This is something we've only really recently been starting to ask guests, and Nick loves when I do this, so I'm going to do it. I'm into astrology, so I
Okay.
would like to know your zodiac sign.
I'm a Sagittarius.
Another Sagittarius. Nick, what is up with this? All these Sagittarius.
We're wild,
it's almost their
right?
season, right, Tra?
It's almost their season. Well, we still got. I mean, Scorpio season just started. Let's pump the brakes here a little bit. But so mostly our most recent guest that we had on before, he was also a Sagittarius, right? So you probably kind of already know the characteristics of your sign, right? Your fire sign, right? The modality of the sign matters, right? So it's like cardinal, fixed, mutable, right? So Sagittarius is mutable fire, very go with the flow. You love learning, you love knowledge, right? From my experience, Sagittarius are very optimistic and naturally cheerful, right? So they kind of lean to the sunny side of things, right? So they always have a smile on their face, kind of like what you just said.
Seems like
right?
Sara.
Yes.
Yes. And something like I said, we've been asking recently, and just recently had the new moon solar eclipse, right? So that'll be hitting us hard into the end of the year. But yeah, do you resonate with the characteristics of your sign? Have you ever been asked that before?
So yes, I resonate with them. I haven't really read much into it, but when I do read certain things, like I'll read like my sign or whatever, like the horoscope, it's always spot on. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like they just like you just said, I'm like, they just described me. That's so weird. Like, how is that so spot on? And I it's so true though.
Yeah, sometimes you got to be
know.
careful about the mainstream information because they like to
Right.
twist things a little bit, and I wouldn't say they lie. I mean, they just package things a certain way, and it's in a very generic way. So, but yeah, I mean, most of the stuff that you probably read out there is somewhat true.
Does it say we're stubborn?
Stubborn though is more earth signs.
Oh,
Like
okay. Okay.
Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Those are the three earth signs. They're really more the stubborn signs, but fixed signs are also stubborn too. So if you're born Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, Taurus, the fixed signs obviously fixed. Their opinions, their belief systems, right? They're all fixed.
Yes.
You can't budge them off the spot, right? So
Yes.
they're more of the stubborn signs. And like I said, you're a mutable sign, so kind of go with the flow.
That is so true though. I mean, my husband likes to plan things, and I'm always like, bro, like, come on. How can you plan fun? Like, can't we just like go with the day? And he's like, what?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, just like, YOLO.
I agree. I agree. So take you back to Kansas a little bit. You were second runner up in the Miss Kansas United States pageant, right?
Yes.
So describe that experience to us, and for we see stuff out there on TV about pageants and stuff, and the stuff behind the scenes that goes into it, and it's kind of this whole different lifestyle, right? Is some of that true from your experience? Like, did you have to go through that kind of stuff?
It is definitely a business. I will say that. It is based, or I wouldn't say exactly a popularity contest. It's more about being a business, being marketable, being somebody who can do certain things or has certain connections. For me, they reached out to me and they were like, we would love for you to compete in the Mrs. Kansas United States pageant. And at that time I owned a salon. So it was very built around like my credentials. I was also vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I had my own salon, which it was an award-winning salon. We were voted best salon, best stylist in our region. So that was something that I was very prideful in. And being that I had two salons, I opened my first salon in Tennessee, and then I moved to Kansas City and opened my second salon in my like hometown in Baser. I wanted to go back and be closer to my family and kind of come back with a bang, essentially, and open that up in my hometown and share what I had with these people. So those pageants, I mean, they pluck their people.
Mhm.
And the way it goes is more fundraising, more charity work, and that is kind of how like winners are based, really.
Makes sense. It's
Yes.
definitely the business side of things there for sure.
Very political.
So tell us about how you became a cosmetologist.
Oh boy, that was a journey. Okay. Like I had always wanted to do something in the beauty industry. But that was not accepted by my parents. It was very like, no,
Taboo.
you're never gonna make money. And it was just a no. So the route they wanted me to take was you better go to college. Like have you ever watched Joe Coy, stand-up comedian? Like his stand-up comedies, Joe Coy, the Filipino comedian, where he talks about his Filipino mom and how she's if you get a chance, he is hilarious and he is dead on with that. So my mom was like, you'll be a nurse, you're going to work in the medical fields. And I mean, like she had my whole life planned for me, and I was very wild, and we just don't mix well. So I had my mindset, but I did try to please her, and I did try to go to college, and that just did not work out. I came from a strict family, and I decided that I was going to party and not go to school. And so at that point I made some choices, and it was like, all right, either I started working at Hooters and I saw that I could make so much money, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. But you don't ever think of, okay, well, what am I going to do in the long haul? And so I decided, well, I really want to go to hair school. So I saved up enough money to go to hair school and pay for it myself without needing my parents, and kind of support myself. And I broke off from my family and said, well, this is what I'm going to do, and I've got to work for it just as hard because I don't have help. So I went to cosmetology school, and that ended up taking me to Tennessee. And afterwards I moved to Tennessee, and that's kind of how my life got started out there. But that was my passion. And once I found out that there's so many doors could open in that industry, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like I want to have my own, and that's how that started.
Absolutely. So how did you meet your husband, Matt? And What was it like when you initially moved to Tennessee?
So it was a culture shock. When I moved to Tennessee, I'm like, oh my God, people open doors for you. And it was
Right.
almost like, what is this? Like,
Southern
why are you being
hospitality.
nice to me? So you had to learn that Southern hospitality. But then there's also those mean old women who are like, oh, bless your heart. And you're like, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Because I can't really feel you out on that, but it's like an insult. So it's like, oh, you're an idiot. I'm so sorry. So I had to learn that too. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I heard that a lot. But I moved to Tennessee and then I met my husband when I was managing the gym and the tanning place that he worked out at. And he actually walked in and dropped all of his things like in front of the front desk. And that was the first day, like I was working the front counter for some reason. And he dropped all of his stuff and he just like looked at me and then went straight to the back, like didn't even check in, nothing. And I was like, what's up with that guy? And then he started coming up to the counter and just making casual conversation. And it wasn't an initial, like I wasn't attracted to him at first, just because I had just been in a relationship. I'm like, I'm not looking for a boyfriend. I'm looking for friends, but he wasn't my type. Like my type was tatted and rugged and just looked like bad boys. And he was very conservative but muscular, and that wasn't my type at the time. And so he asked me out on a date and I told him no. And then finally, after a few weeks, it was like about a month, I reached out to him. I found his phone number in the computer
Ooh.
and I texted him and I was like, hey, it's Sara from the gym. And he was like, how'd you get my number? And that was exactly what he said to me. And so then I got scared. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. Like, oh my God, what if he tells my boss that I found his number in the computer system? And he goes, no, it's okay that you got my number. I just wanted to know if it was somebody that gave you my number so I could vet the situation. I'm like, oh, okay. So then we went on our first date, which was a Titans game, which I didn't know was our first date. I thought we were just hanging out. I didn't know that it was a date. Like
That's
I'm like,
some
oh, we're going
first
to a
date.
tailgate. Yeah. And I ended up getting drunk and leaving him in the stadium to go tailgate with my friends who were in the parking lot.
Wow.
So
You made a
yeah,
good first impression on him.
it was awful. It was terrible.
Oh, he forgave you, right?
Oh yeah. I like had to kiss his butt a little bit. And I was like, okay, I feel really bad that I just totally ditched this guy in the stadium. I like him, but I wanted to have fun, you know? And I was at that time, I'm single and broke and I'm working two jobs. I'm not going to pay for stadium beer that's $35. So I'm like, I'm going back to the parking lot where it's free liquor. So I did take him to dinner like a couple days later and I tried to apologize and then the rest is history.
There you go. It's all right. It ended up working out for you for the
Yes.
best. Everything
Yes.
happens for a reason.
Right.
So talk about being an egotastic football predictor.
Okay. So Egotastic reached out to me and they were like, hey, you are like, you love Tennessee football. And I'm like, yeah, I love the SEC. Like, I love football. What's up? And they're like, we think it would be amazing if you could, work for us or do something for us. And I was like, well, I can predict games. Like, do you want me to do that? And they're like, yeah, make it your own. Just whatever you want to do. And I'm like, well, I could do it in a bikini and it can be fun. And we can make this super like just different and have an edge and it fits me and my personality. And I also get to talk about sports. So Egotastic has been amazing. They have been so supportive and always like there for me. So that was my like way into sports and what my start was.
It's paid off for you, and there's other things you've been doing, and you're still grinding away. So what's your favorite, type of things to look at when you're doing these sports type of videos?
So I think it's just like part of me, like my husband and I, like this is what we like normal conversation. Like I guess normal couples talk about their lives or I don't know what they talk about, but for us it's always football. Like, oh my God, did you see Mark Stoops? Did you see his interview? Yeah. Did you see it? Did you see what Will Levis said? Like it's always something regarding like what's going on, the drama. And I fell in love because it was like TMZ on like sports.
Right.
I fell in love with that side of things. And then we would like message each other different stories that we saw. So I love just, I love that there's so much drama involved in sports, and there's so many like different like scandals and things that play a role in how you make your picks. Like Auburn and Arkansas are playing this weekend, and I'm like, well, Auburn's kind of a shit show right now. They've got things that aren't working in their favor. They've got some drama up there. Brian Harson, it's not good. Their culture, their morale, maybe that's going to play a big role in how that team plays. And then you have like injuries. And so there's just so many different things that you look at. And that's kind of what I fell in love with.
So you have appeared previously on magazine covers.
Yes.
Now, the industry is dying because nobody sells physical magazines anymore. Everything is digital and online, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, that has changed, and being on OnlyFans, and but the process of a company reaching out to you, saying that, hey, we think you would be a great fit. We think you would look great on our cover, right? So how does that process play out, right? Do those types of people, did they reach out directly to you? And in terms of manager and agent, and this is something that I feel like we could pair with this, right? Did you have somebody in your life who acted as a manager and agent, got you bookings for stuff like that, got you those appearances, those photo shoots, right? Ultimately led to you being on those magazine covers.
So when I had started out in this industry with modeling, there's not like, there's a bunch of phonies. Like it is the industry of fake, basically, I will say. And it's sad that I have to say that. But there's a lot of scammers. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, hey, photographers are the worst. They will bait these girls, and it is so sad. So I have only worked with a few photographers, and that's like my circle. I will only shoot with them. And I get tons of DMs where it's like, oh, can we photograph you? Can we do this? Can we do that? And we could get you on the cover of this magazine. We could get you on the cover of that magazine, but it's going to cost you 10 grand. And you're like, wait a minute, what? Like, is this how this really works? So I had the owner of the publication, the owner who bought Playboy and who bought the rights to all of that after it was being sold from Hugh Hefner. And his goal was to make it international. He wanted to really branch off, but give it more, because overseas, all these magazines, they still hold their value. And to them, it's huge. Like it's big time. America has like been the issue with the magazines, because everything is at our, like immediate capture. Like we could get everything right away. Right. So everything is digital here. Everything is different. It's social media. It's all of that, but it still helps build your brand here. So when he reached out to me, I was like, are you serious? Me, like that? No way, And I'm like, this is a dream come true. This is something that of course you want this when you're in this industry, but it's not something you think will happen for you. But everything that I've done has been direct to me. I've never had an agent. I've never had an agency, a manager, a PR, anything. It has all been me, and it's all been organic. So that was something that made me more proud of that opportunity and how I went about that.
No, of course. You act as your own boss.
Yes.
What's better than that? Dictate your schedule, when you want to do things, how much you get paid for that. No, absolutely. Right. Yeah, a lot of people that we've had on, traditional people who are on media, like TV broadcasters and stuff, a lot of them have had agents. A lot of them, those agents have helped them get the jobs where they're at. And a lot of people have acted on their own behalf. So I really think it just purely depends. It seems like at this point, Nick and I, when we ask it, it's a 50-50 question.
Right. And I have reached out now in the position. Now I have a team. because it's too much for just me to handle anymore. Like before I had a grip on it, and I'm still trying to be a mom. I'm still trying to go to hockey tournaments and then, do my own podcast and do my own social media and my own pictures, editing, putting these pictures up and reaching out to different networks and have different opportunities or go do appearances. You're requested here. It's a lot to manage. So my husband does a lot of my scheduling. Because I'm a Sagittarius and I am not good at that. So he knows a lot more. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing today? Oh yeah, that's right. But he does a lot of that. And then I also have, now I have I guess he's like an assistant, and he helps me with a lot of other things, run my social medias, like, okay, you need to be posting this, you need to share this. This is what you're doing today. Like, make it a big deal and don't minimize the accomplishments that you have. You're like, because it's not success to me because it's not where I want to be yet. I'm always like hungry for more, and like the learning aspect, I guess, of the Sagittarius, where it's not complete yet. I'm not where it's done, but I didn't celebrate it. It's like, okay, well, I achieved that. What's next? Like, what is there still left? So it's very important now that I have this team, because they're like, girl, like, get it together. Like, still manage your day to day. You have to go work out. You have to eat. You have to like, there's things you need to do. So
Yep.
they have a purpose.
Sagittarius is love spur of the moment stuff, and they're always learning,
Yes.
always learning something new. Something that Nick and I want to learn about you is, what type of car do you drive?
I have a Jeep Rubicon. So I drive a Wrangler, a 2021.
Okay, so fairly new.
Yes.
I used to drive a Cherokee when I was younger.
And this was my dream car. Like, my absolute, ever since I was a little girl, I wanted a Jeep. And then one of my favorite movies is Clueless. So I was like, oh my God, I want this white Jeep. And
yep.
yeah. So then I eventually ended up a couple months ago, actually, finding like the white Jeep Rubicon that I've been looking for. And I was able to get it. And it was a big moment for me. And I mean, it's my baby. I love driving it. I have fun driving it. And so my husband just got a truck, and we went to the car dealership, and we saw there was a G-Wagon out there. And of course, like, everybody's like, oh yeah, G-Wagon, like that's the top or whatever. As far as like when you get in this industry, a lot of models have the G-Wagon. Right. So I went and I looked at it, and I just stood there, and I was like, in my stomach was turning at the thought of even thinking about trading in my Jeep, because that is my dream. Like, that's my dream car. And I'm like, I just don't think this. And then I looked at the price tag, and I'm like, oh my God, I could buy a whole new house with this shit. Like, no way. There's no way I could trade in my Jeep for this. There's just no way. Right. So yeah, that's it for me.
Living in Florida, driving is certainly essential. Joe has plenty of family members throughout Florida. What part of Florida are you in?
So I am right outside of Tampa.
Okay.
And
that's where Joe's family's at.
Oh, really? You'll have to come visit, and then we could go have drinks.
Joe will be there sooner than you think.
Yeah.
he's usually down there around St. Pete and Tampa Bay at least a few times a year.
So I live out like, I'm sort of like in this middle of where it's like 45 minutes to Sarasota or 45 minutes to Tampa, and then an hour to Orlando. So I'm kind of like in this like little like area. But I bought a farm out here. So very rural.
How often do you and the family head up to Orlando for some amusement parks?
A lot. We have season passes to Universal. Okay. That is our favorite thing to do. I love it. We love roller coasters. When we first moved here, we started with Busch Gardens. And then after going there almost every day, it was like, all right, what's next? So we decided, we're like, oh, we got to go to Universal. But my kids weren't old enough, or they weren't tall enough to ride some of the rides yet. So we waited, and then now they're finally to the point where they're tall enough and it's fun. And we did like the Velocicoaster, the Jurassic Park roller coaster, which I think is the best roller coaster I've ever been on in my entire life. It's so cool. But there's not, like, you can't ride it enough. It's so much fun. And then we did the Harry Potter rides and stuff, and just the minion, like, they love it. And seeing them happy makes me happy, even though it's a lot of walking and it's hot as hell. I'm like, can we go in November? Or I'm like, guys, I don't really want to go in the summer. I'm sweating my butt off. It's hot.
Brutal. I mean, I was down in Orlando at the end of May, and we had one day clear. So my wife probably went to Universal. It was Memorial Day. It was brutally hot. It was packed. We got there at 7:30 a.m. and then we left at 11:30 p.m. We just there the whole day. That's how you got to do it. But they were like, oh, there might be some lightning in the area, so many things are just closed. Kind of frustrating. But it's a long day, and kudos to you, because I see these families walking around and I'm like, this looks brutal. Looks like it's no fun for the parents. I mean, waiting on these long
Disney.
lines.
That is Disney World. So we went in July to Disney World for we did a day pass. And I was looking around at everybody. I'm like, first of all, we literally stayed there for 2 hours. And I was like, guys, I can't do this one. It's too hot. But looking at all of the families, I'm like, they say this is the happiest place on earth, but all of these married couples want to kill each other. And everybody's short tempered because it's hot and they're waiting in line and they're like, shut up. And I'm like, oh my God, this is if you want to see some drama, that's better than Jerry Springer all day. Go to Disney World in the summer. Married couples do not make it through.
That's absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's it. That's what I was envisioning. So we got to ask you our signature question here. You kind of addressed it earlier, but give us a time or a moment where in your life or your career you wanted to pursue something. You asked somebody for advice, or in your case, maybe permission. They said, absolutely not. Don't do that. That's not going to work out. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately, you will see why it is that I'm right.
Okay, so I don't really know how to answer this because that's my life story. So I've always been known to go against the grain. I've always done my own thing. If somebody tells me not to do something, I'm going to do it. If somebody says, oh, well, for example, I'm a mom of 4. I'm curvy. I'm not this size 0 model that you would see all the time. And I'm not essentially I'm not cutthroat or bitchy. And that's what I feel like this industry is. I've had a lot of tough lessons. But a lot of it, even the sports, hey, you're never going to make it in the sports industry. You're never going to be anything. So right now I'm out here and I'm like, watch me pave a different way than somebody else did. Or with hair school, once I do something and I master it, I'm on to the next. I'm like, okay, so what else can I do? And it's been just hair school. I mean, modeling, the whole OnlyFans thing. It's hard. My husband's very supportive and he sees how hard that I work at this and the opportunities that have come from it. But my family doesn't support it. They're supportive in a sense, okay, please do this and get out of it. So it's conditional support, but I love what I do and I don't have plans of doing something else. Of course, I'm looking at investments. We already did some real estate and we have a farm and everybody's like, oh my God, the farm's never going to work. You're never going to like living on a farm and getting dirty. And you're not going to have this nice, clean house. It's always going to be dirty. I'm like, okay, so what? You make adjustments and life is too short to not go and do something that's taking a left turn or going a different route. It's fun to experience all you can. And I did homeschool with my kids and I failed miserably. I'm not going to lie. We did 2 months of homeschool and on Monday, I resigned from that position. I was like, oh, hell no, this is not for me. I'm out Like I quit
Your teaching,
and I went
your teaching
straight.
career is over.
Yeah, I was like, my teaching career lasted 2 months. I will never do this again. And we enrolled the kids, and today's their first day in school. And I'm like, oh my God, it's quiet. What is this? This is amazing. Why did we even try to homeschool? So I failed at that, but I'm okay with failing with that. It was awful. It was hell.
You're not going to succeed in everything you do.
You're right.
But if you succeed in most things you do, which it seems like you've done, that's perfectly okay. Sarah, thank you for your time. We really appreciate
Thank
this.
you.
What we do here is we always give our guests the last words, and if there's anything else you would like to share or promote, we know you still have plenty. By all means, go ahead. We wish you the best of luck. We wish you the best of luck with your farm. I think you're ahead of the game, much more ahead of the game than a lot of people are. Go get you some animals, go grow you some crops.
Oh gosh.
Maybe you'll start expanding, but you're a country gal, right? You're from Kansas. So what do you used to? You used to
Right, I
open
mean,
farms. So makes sense. But again, if there's anything else you'd like to share, promote, go ahead.
You guys thank you for the luck. I need all the luck I can get with farming. I killed all my plants, so we'll take it. We'll try with the crops, or I want to try blueberries. So I need all the help I can get with that. And I don't know if we will be a farm that makes money, because I will not kill cows. I'll eat them, but I just don't want to like raise them and love them and then be like, okay,
Milk
it's
the
time
cows.
yeah. So maybe like dairy's probably right up my alley for that. But thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was very fun. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Sara Blake Cheek. For my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.